even in the morning.
Although I can think of myself as a singer, I don't really feel that's who or even what I truly am. But really, I'm no more or less a singer than a pianist.
No making of ways can take me down.
Singing is just something I do, something anyone can do, but not necessarily better than others.
Wherever I'm at.
But not doing something especially well doesn't mean you're not actually doing it. And like playing piano, singing is something that can be improved on, no matter how well you already do it. I didn't formally study singing, it's just something I grew up with. But like most things, singing is something you can study informally. And that's what this documentary is about. An informal study of turning the human voice from speaking to singing. From saying things normally to expressing them extraordinarily. Speaking can be like music. I think you'd call that poetry.
Wherever I'm at.
But poetry only captures one side of music, rhythm. That other side, melody, is what puts the greatest demands on the human voice.
I've nailed it down for
Hi, my name is Jeff Barber, jazz pianist, vocalist, and composer, and I have here with me the lovely
Vanessa, and I would like to learn how to sing.
Singing is not exactly the same as speaking, as most of us know have attempted it. And most of us have attempted it. For the first time, Vanessa is actually going to go through the process of learning how to sing.
I've been told I have a lovely voice, but when I tried singing, it just didn't sound as good as when I speak.
One of the issues that we've noticed with Vanessa is she doesn't hear music in her head. I grew up with music. I can actually hear orchestras in my head. I can hear most musical instruments, I can hear my own voice, and I can attempt to reproduce that when I'm sitting down at the piano or actually trying to sing along with a piece of music.
Well, even if I do hear it in my head, it's hard to match it with my throat. So when I make the sound, I go, oh, that doesn't quite sound like how I hear it.
So in that case, Vanessa is striving to achieve some control over her larynx and the resonant cavities that make up her body, and also get in touch with the sources of strength that are sometimes needed when one is attempting to propel the voice to an audience. So we're going to work on some exercises that we're going to make up on the fly, and you're welcome to join along with us as we undertake this process of learning how to sing. Okay, you can see now that Vanessa and I are beside the piano. We're actually going to begin to work with the qualities of singing as opposed to the qualities of speaking. As you may well know, there's a note called middle C in the piano. And that's a good reference point for developing how to sing, because C is such a common note that's what we hear in music. So let's see if we can sound this C, Vanessa. You want to give it a shot by yourself first?
Do, do, do.
Okay, there's a start. Now, before we start working more on the intonation and tonal qualities, let's see if we get a sense of the range of your voice. And what we're going to do is we're going to make reference to this little cheat sheet, which has the do, re, mi sounds that correspond to notes. And we're going to go up and down the scale and see if we can determine what your basic range of tonality is, regardless of whether or not you hit the notes purely. So let's start here at do and go down.
Do, ti, fa, sol, fa, mi, re.
Did you have a little trouble with re? Okay, that's a D below middle C. So it looks like initially you can get down to an E below middle C. Okay, so let's now go up from middle C. can go one octave above middle C, and you can go to E below middle C, roughly. Okay, so that gives you a range of a little more than an octave and a half at this point. Okay, so what we're going to do after having determined your range, let's develop some exercises to see if we can get your intonation a little sharper. How's that sound? In our last segment, we determined that Vanessa had a range of vocals that extended from about E below middle C to C above middle C. Now what we need to do is coach Vanessa in her ability to actually sing with some intonation, pitch that matches to the note. So if I strike the note middle C, the piano is a precision instrument. It plays the note middle C, especially this electronic piano. But when we attempt to give a note with our voices, there's not like a little button we can push inside that's going to cause precisely that note to come out. What we have to do is somehow match the pitch of our voice against the standard reference. And in this case, the standard reference is C in the piano. So let's begin. Vanessa, give me your best shot at Do.
Do.
Do. This is what you did. Okay, so now I play C on the piano.
Do. Do. Do.
Okay, notice that initially you're closer to actually getting the pitch of C than you are later on. Effectively, your pitch trails off. It becomes flatter and flatter. Now, that typically means that wherever your impulse of energy is, which is typically down here in your solar plexus, is stronger initially, and that's what's propelling the intonation of your note. You're not actually causing a pure Do based on the oscillations of your larynx. In this session, we're going to focus on how to maintain a note as opposed to how to find it. And you might remember that Vanessa did a good job of actually finding middle C, for instance, Do initially, but then it trailed off. Trailing off usually indicates one of two changes that have occurred. Either the muscles have relaxed in the larynx, associated with the larynx, which puts tension on the vibrating surfaces, or the amount of air being delivered from the diaphragm, associated with the solar plexus, is trailing off. So you have to be able to get in touch with how to control those two things. Well, when it comes to musculature...
So there are two exercises, two separate exercises. One for getting in touch with the solar plexus, and one getting in touch with the throat, which I did not think about before.
A good exercise for getting in touch with the throat muscles is to say the word gulp.
Gulp.
Notice when you said, what did you experience when you said the word gulp?
I could feel something right in my center of my throat.
And you could feel the lateral muscles that were associated with it? Gulp.
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 Now, a good way of getting in touch with the air column is to say the word wheeze. Wheeze. Wheeze.
And breathing at the same time?
You have to breathe. You got to deliver a column of air. Wheeze.
So I'm pushing up air by pushing my solar plexus in and saying the word wheeze.
Wheeze. Now, the key to the exercise is not just to say wheeze, it's to hold the E as long as possible. Wheeze. And for the word gulp, it's to hold the ulp. Gulp. So, practice your wheezing and your gulping and see if you can get more in touch, and then we'll come back and see if we can improve the sustainability of
I'm hearing Vanessa practicing her gulping in an adjoining room. It's kind of an absurd word, isn't it, Vanessa?
Well, I found that it is very good for isolating the sound in the throat, exercising the throat muscles.
How about the other word, which I believe was wheeze? Want to do that for us?
Was wheeze, 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 wheeze.
how has that helped?
Well, that helps in pushing the sound up from the diaphragm, whereas the gulp just isolates it in the throat and just exercises the throat muscles. So I realized that singing is more complex than I realized. We use more muscles than I realized.
Do you think there might be a word that we could work with that would blend the effect of both gulp and wheeze?
Oh, good.
Why don't you give that some thought, and I'll come back and visit with you later.
Okay, thank you.
Once again, I'm hearing Vanessa in the other room, and she seems to have discovered a new keyword, this time to blend the influences of both the larynx and the diaphragm, and that word is?
Heart. Heart.
Heart.
So the H sound pushes from the diaphragm up, and the R, see, you can feel it vibrating in the throat, combining the both, and the sustaining note is the ah. So heart.
You'll notice I have in my hand a deck of cards, and I'm going to ask Vanessa to shuffle the cards. Turn one over. The ace of diamonds. It's a diamond, it's a red card, and it's an ace. So we're going to assume all the aces are C. Now, another card, please. A 9 of heart, which is also a red card. So we're going to work with these two notes. We're going to work with the keywords. And the keywords for Vanessa are?
Gulp, wheeze, and heart.
Okay, so go ahead and do those three words.
Gulp, wheeze, heart.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A flat is going to be the 9 of hearts in this case. Up because it's red. If it had been a black card, it would have been down. Your three keywords, please.
Gulp, wheeze, heart.
Now, working with those, and just with gulp, we're going to go oscillate between these two notes. This is the beginning of melody. In this case, it's an intervallic melody, and it's comprised of middle C and A flat above middle C. The ability to transition between two notes is the beginnings of developing a sense of melody in music. And so Vanessa will be working with random cards based on the notion that any card that's red goes up from middle C, any card that's black goes down from middle C, and that it's based on the chromatic scale. So Vanessa will be working with that as an exercise so she can begin to learn the intervals between notes, notes that have been randomly selected by shuffling a deck of cards and then pulling the cards off. To begin with, she'll work with two note combinations, and then we'll go from there. Let's see what Vanessa's up to. It looks like she's laid out a couple of cards. An ace of hearts and a 10 of spades, both red. She's playing a middle C for the ace. And it's an A above middle C for the 10. And she's using her keywords. I think we'll leave her to herself. I've been spending a little time visualizing the relationships between notes in the chromatic scale, which are the 12 tones we associated with Western music, as geometric relationships. So you might see before you here, I've actually color-coded a little bit.
And what I've done is I've broken down the 12 tones of the chromatic scale, which is based on half tone steps, into groups of 2, groups of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 notes. In so doing, I tried to make the resulting geometries as symmetrical as possible. Why is this of any value? Because as a budding singer, you want to develop the capacity to be able to range between any 2 notes in the chromatic scale among a variety of octaves, and you want to be able to find those notes readily. Like most things, if you're going to learn something well, you have to break it down into smaller parts before you can put it all together as a whole. And the phrase that goes along with this is analysis precedes synthesis. Breaking things down precedes putting them all back together again. The gain you get once you've gone through this process of analysis and synthesis is now, instead of something you understood naively, you now understand comprehensively. So this was part of my project of visualizing geometrically the relationships between notes. Over the course of this series, Learning How to Sing, we're going to explore some of these geometries. We've actually already explored one of them, and that is the monotonic scale. The monotonic scale we'll think of as being a single note. That scale probably originated as a form of chant long ago, where you'd get a group of people together, perhaps around a campfire or even in a cave, and you'd have them sound the same note. Presumably, the note that we think of as do was probably one of the first notes that was sounded. And that, of course, is middle C on the piano. Do. Using this geometric approach to music, what we're going to learn is various other relationships. For instance, the diatonic scale, which is 2 notes. And since I've divided the 12-tone scale up geometrically, the note that corresponds to do in the diatonic scale would be the note that was associated with F sharp or G flat. Now we have no moniker for that note. However, I have gone through and I have come up with a few that might be of value. So do would leap to Fo, Do, Fo, Do, Fo, which leverages off Fa, Fa, Fo. So that would be the diatonic scale. Over the course of this series, we'll introduce other scales as well.
Hello, I'm practicing my notes of the 3 cards that I picked randomly. 10 of spades, ace of clubs, and 7 of diamonds. I cannot reach, my voice cannot do the ace of clubs, which would be down here, so I'm pretending it's an ace of diamonds, which would be the middle C here. So the 10 of spades, I started from the ace of clubs and counted down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So then the ace of clubs, which I am pretending is ace of diamonds, and 7 of diamonds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So their sounds are La, Do, Fo. La, Do, Fo. Then my 3 practice words are go, go, go. Wheeze, 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 wheeze. Combination word. Ha, I practice the sounds, stretching my throat sounds from la, do, fo, and then backwards. Fo, do, la. It helps practicing both ways because you really push your vocal chords and sounds that way.
As Vanessa continues to study musical intervals based on randomly selected cards and the tones that they can represent, we're going to continue our look at the geometric relationships between notes in the 12-tone or chromatic scale. We'll continue this by looking at it from the point of view of the key of C, and we'll also use the new set of additional sounds, phonemes, or monikers that can capture tones in the chromatic scale that are not part of the Do Re Mi scale, which we are all familiar with. So for instance, if we had a diatonic or a diatonic scale, it would consist of two notes. Those notes would be Do and Fo, and if in the key of C, those would be C and F sharp or G flat. So Do, Fo, Do, Fo, Do, Fo. Something very jazzy about that relationship. Now, if we were to look at a three-note geometric relationship, we would no longer continue to have the Fo. What we would have would we'd have Do, Mi, and in this case, a new moniker, which is Sa. Do, Mi, Sa, Do, Mi, Sa, Do, Mi, Sa. Mi, of course, being E, and Sa being A flat or G sharp. Now, if we continue and we add the octave to Do, actually sounds rather interesting musically to the ear. Once again, it has a very limited number of permutations, but there is an interest to that. And in fact, if you were to construct such a chord on the piano, it would approximate to what is known as a C sharp 5. Once again, a chord that is regularly used in jazz. Okay, now we're going to look at one final relationship set between notes geometrically in this session, and that's going to be the tetratonic or four-tone scale. The four-tone scale is very interesting because it actually forms a chord called a diminished chord, and that chord consists of C, E flat, F sharp, and A, which has a strong feeling of suspense and some level of risk associated with it. Now let's go ahead and sound through these using the new sound monikers to augment those of the 7-tone scale. So that would be Do, Ra, Fo, once again, and La. Do, Ra, Fo, La. Do, Ra, Fo, La. Do, Ra, Fo, La. And once again, completing the octave. Although none of these particular scales are used with any regularity in the composition of music, the next one we're going to look at, known as the Pentatonic Scale, is used frequently in the blues, frequently in rock and roll, and frequently in Oriental music. And that bears a good deal more analysis. So stick around. That's a simple melody constructed on the basis of the Eastern version of the pentatonic 5-tone scale, a scale that's more easily visualized simply playing the black notes on the piano.
Oriental version of the 5-tone scale does not map symmetrically against the chromatic scale when projected on the face of a clock. To make it symmetric, we have to modify one of its components. Basically, we have to take the A, if we create the 5-tone scale in the key of C, and modify it by making it an A sharp or a B flat. So let's have a listen. Now notice there's a significant difference in these two scales. In the Oriental version, I was able to resolve my melody to the note F. In the geometrically symmetrical version, I had to resolve it to B flat. So even a single small change like that can radically change a piece of music in terms of a melodic construction. When it comes to vocalizing the geometric form of the pentatonic scale, we already have 4 of the 5 phonemes in the key of C. Those are Do, Re, Fa, So. Do, Re, Fa, So, Do, Re, Fa, So, Do, Re, Fa, So. Or the notes C, D, F, and G. Now we have to introduce, however, for the 5th note, we have to introduce the phoneme of low, representing A sharp or B flat. So, Do, Re, Fa, So, Do. Do, Re, Fa, So, Do. Do, Re, Fa, So, Do. And completing the scale by an octave, Do, Re, Fa, So, Do. And descending, Do, Do, So, Fa, Re, Do. Do, Do, So, Fa, Re, Do. Do, Do, So, Fa, Re, Do. By introducing a 5th musical tone into our scale, however, we have immeasurably enhanced the musical possibilities in terms of the construction of melodies. So what you working on, Vanessa?
I'm practicing the pentatonic scale on the black keys, which is very melodic. Do, ra, fo, sol, do, so, fa, ra, do.
Did you work with your keywords?
Yes, I've been practicing 45 minutes, and I did each one individually so that I could find it melodically by using my 3 keywords.
Do you feel like you have a good balance now between your energizing center and your modulating center?
Well, it's been very helpful, so it does sound at least a little musical. Do, and I'm able to carry enough energy from my diaphragm up to get the sound out. Do.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of a hexatonic scale when played symmetrically against the geometric layout of the 12 tones of the chromatic scale. Some very interesting aspects to this particular scale. Basically, the scale is a kludge. It's a kludge of the key of C with Do, Re, Mi, and the key of F sharp or G flat with its own Do, Re, Mi. If we attempt to put these two scales together, we end up with a Do, Re, Mi and a Fa, Sol, La. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. The overall sense of this particular scale, no matter where your Do is there's a sense of quandary and irresolution. And we can see that best when we attempt to construct a chord. Imagine a musical instrument that's only capable of playing a hexatonic scale. That instrument would not be able to form one of the foundational chords, the major fifth. If you listen to that major fifth, you get a sense of triumphalism. You get a sense of resolution. You get a sense of landing somewhere with certainty. If you had an instrument that was only capable of playing the hexatonic scale, you would end up with either a diminished fifth or an augmented fifth. The sense you get of a diminished fifth is an attempt to return to the original Do for resolution. The sense you get with an augmented fifth is a sense to return to a higher Do for resolution. Notice that there is an attempt to return to the past or an attempt to progress to the future. That's why I call the hexatonic scale the scale for octones. Vanessa, what you working on?
The hexatonic scale has what I call three Western notes. Do, Re, Mi, and three notes which to me sound or Eastern. Fa, Fa, Sol, La, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re, Do.
So what do you think of this particular scale in terms of practicing and developing your ear and your control of your tonality?
Well, it is interesting having to switch from, like I said, switching from sort of a Western musical to Eastern.
So it's kind of like you're going along with Do, Re, Mi, and you expect to go to Fa, and you don't go to Fa.
Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La.
So there's a break in this
Yes.
scale, isn't there?
And for some reason, I find the Eastern easier for me to do than the Western.
Maybe it's just because it's down your
More
range.
my range.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other? Is it as musical as the pentatonic scale? For instance, remember how we discovered how musical the pentatonic scale sounds? After all, three of those notes are in the pentatonic scale,
True.
right?
Oh yes, I think it's musical. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La.
What if you do it backwards? Does it sound musical?
La, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re, Do.
What if you start?
la, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol. Well, that last note really pushed it, didn't it, Vanessa?
No, I'd say 3 notes before that. But the last note was easier for me. I don't know why.
That's peculiar. Anyway, what we just did is we spanned a little more than 2.5 octaves attempting to sing the Do Re Mi scale. That scale, the classic heptatonic scale, has numerous modalities. All those modalities consist of 7 tones. And they were originated on the basis of taking a standard lyre, acoustic instrument from the first millennia, and then changing slightly the pitches of the various notes in order to get different pleasing relationships among the intervals. The only intervals that really map against the clock face of the chromatic scale in a symmetric fashion is known as the Neapolitan major scale, using C as the root. In the Neapolitan major scale, the second and third notes of the standard heptatonic scale in the key of C are flatted. So the scale sounds like this. The monikers we use for the flatted second and the third are do and ra. So let's see if we can sound this out. Do. Now listen carefully. Do. Back. Do. Do. We're listening again. Again. Do, do, ra, fa, sol, la, ti, do. One more time. Do, do, ra, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And in
Am I
reverse.
too high? Am I-
Yeah, you're wavering a little bit, but that's okay. You're still learning, and you are definitely hitting your notes better and sustaining them for longer periods of time on pitch. Let's go backwards. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, ra, do, do. Again, reverse. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, ra, do, do. Do, ti, one problem with the Neapolitan major scale is when used against Do as C, you end up with no major. You end up with minor chords as standard when you only use the 7 tones. So you end up with minors. You have to literally sharp the 3rd note of the Neapolitan major scale in order to get a major chord. What is the feel of a minor chord? Minor chords are downers. There's a certain melancholy to minor chords. There's none of the suspense of the dominant, of the diminished chord. There is simply an acceptance of life as being down. Very Russian. However, in terms of developing vocal expertise, the use of all of the symmetric scales that we've discussed here is extremely valuable in terms of breaking old habits and establishing new patterns of listening for intervals. So once again, the Neapolitan major scale, with C as the root. Do, do, ra, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Do, ra, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, ra, do, do.
Hey, what you working on, Vanessa?
The Neapolitan major scale,
How many notes are in it?
7.
How is it different from the normal Do Re Mi scale?
But you start off on the same note, the Do, and the next 2 notes are flatted or the black notes. So Do, do, ra, as opposed to Do, re, mi.
You know, as a musician, I wouldn't really call that a major scale. Why is that, you think?
Well, because the 3rd note is a flat, so that makes it a minor scale.
So how does it make you feel when you go through this scale?
Well, it starts off very dramatic. Do, do, ra, almost deeper feelings, and then sing-songy. Oh, so, la, ti, do.
Ah, it sounds like a little bit like the hexatonic scale. Do you remember that was a kludge between the major and the pentatonic, right? So this is, but this is interesting. The 2 notes that weren't in the pentatonic scale, in the hexatonic scale, were the what? Do you remember? If you played the black keys in the hexatonic scale, you played the higher 3 keys, right?
Oh,
Do you remember that? And in this one, you don't play those 3 black keys, you play the lower black keys. Interesting,
Right.
isn't it?
Yes, so the other one sounded like east and west, but this has a different kind of drama.
So it's like a blend of the east and west, but it's not like a kludge, is it? It's actually more
No.
like a real scale. Do you get that sense? Like you could actually make up songs to this that would act as a blend of east and west without sounding as though it's a kludge.
This one doesn't have the Asian feel like the other one. It has a more operatic feel.
Well, I'd almost describe it as being Eastern European, wouldn't you?
Eastern European, yes.
Yeah,
as
so that's the
opposed
sense
to
of it.
Eastern Asian.
Excellent.
That, ladies and gentlemen, are the 8 tones in progression of the symmetrical octatonic scale. A scale which itself is a progression by adding 1 more note of the Neapolitan major scale, a 7-tone scale.
When we examine this scale, we notice very interesting characteristics. Do has two very close neighbors, Do, Ti, and Do. Do, Ti, Do, Do, Ti, Do, Do, Ti, Do. Likewise, Fo has two very close half-step neighbors. Fa, fo, so, fa, fo, so, fa, fo, so, fa, fo, so. That accounts for 6 of the notes. The flyers are the Ra of E flat and the La of A. Ra, La, Ra, La, Ra, La. If we were to construct a melody based on this particular scale, we'd find we'd be playing an awful lot of C minors, F majors, and G sharp 5s or flat 5s. Let's give it a shot. Quite bluesy, isn't it? And that bluesy feel is in harmony with both the Neapolitan major scale and this octatonic scale, and that has a sense of weight and down, blue. In terms of vocalization and practicing these scales, in sequence, we have the C, Do, the D flat, Do, the E flat, Ra, the F, Fa, the F sharp, Fo, the G, So, the A, La, and the B, Ti, once again landing in a higher octave of Do. So let's run through this a little bit. Do, do, Ra, Fa, Fo, So, La, Ti, Do. Again. Do, do, Ra, Fa, Fo, So, La, Ti, Do. One final time. Do, do, Ra, Fa, Fo, So, La, Ti, Do. And descending. Do, Ti, La, So, Fo, Fa, Ra, Do, Do. Do, Ti, La, So, Fo, Fa, Ra, Do, Do. One final time. Do, Ti, La, So, Fo, Fa, Ra, Do, Do. So, we're ending this final scale on a high note. And what scale is that?
Octatonic scale. which means 8 notes. So
And-
we've added one more note. It's made it a little more sophisticated. And that new note is bow.
So you notice that it's a little more sophisticated. Is that more of an emotional sophistication or is it more of an intellectual sophistication? Is it more in your head or is it more in your heart?
Oh, well, it's more emotional. Music is emotional, but if you write it, I mean, obviously the writer would be more intellectual.
Now, how much time do you spend practicing on a regular basis?
Minimum 45 minutes a day.
And
Yes, I practice every day. We've been at it for 3 weeks, and I have noticed it is getting easier. My range is extending.
How about actually finding the notes quickly? How's that going for you?
It is going easier than day one, of course. So,
I understand you're having a little trouble today.
yes, today I had a hard time getting started. I feel like I was back to square one.
So
But
things
don't be disappointed.
can sometimes get better before they get worse,
Right?
or they get worse before they get better.
And Pavarotti said, he warned that, yes, weather does affect the voice. So, and today was a huge weather change. So I'm hoping that's what it is.
Okay, I'd like to wrap this up by doing a range check like we did at the very
Okay.
beginning of this series. So if you could start at middle C and go down and then go up again,
Okay.
just using the Do Re Mi scale. Don't use the octatonic.
Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do.
So you actually this time got all the way down to the Do below middle C. Let's see if you can go above it.
Okay. Do, re, mi, la, sol, la, ti, do.
Continue.
Mi.
Okay, so you're having a little trouble with me on this occasion. Now, have you noticed that there's, it's at the fringes where we tend to break down in our ability to sing. So when you got down next to Do below middle C, you were starting to have trouble. So what you really want to do is be able to master all the tones well over a 2-octave range, which for you would be from Ra below middle C all the way up to Re 1 octave above middle C. That would give you a
Right.
2-octave range. That is the place to shoot for as an immediate goal. Extend your
Okay.
ability to sing quickly, find the notes, hold the notes, the intonation, and then be able to do that across 2 octaves. And
Yes.
that will be your goal for the future.
Right, so the key is practicing each note, doing the exercises, all 4 of them for each note.
Well, Vanessa, you've been a great partner in this project, and we have another one after this. I've written a piece of music that incorporates all of these scales, and then what we'll do is we'll learn together how to sing it, because it is fairly sophisticated and challenging. All right, thank you so
Get
much.
yourself a
Thank
nice
you.
clean white sheet of paper and a clipboard, pencil or colored marker. I'm going to use a colored marker. Draw yourself a circle. That circle represents the all. And the all in Western music is the chromatic scale. Divide the circle up as though it were the face of a clock. The 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock, the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock. Now, that's only 4 positions. Then 3 equal segments in each of these quadrants. If you count them, you'll see that's a total of 12. By way of review, let's remember that in Western music, we tend to stay fairly close conventionally to the Do Re Mi scale. A scale which, by the way, as we've already learned, that is not symmetric, but let's mark it out. You have the Do, you have a full step to the Re, you have a full whole tone scale to the Mi. You then have a half tone step to Fa, a full tone step to So, full tone step to La, and a full tone step to T, followed by a half tone step to Do on the higher octave. It's not symmetric, right? If it were to be symmetric, something would have to be here, and if it was here, that would make it an 8-tone scale. There's also a problem with the Mi and the Re. So if we were to create truly symmetric scales, we'd start with a Do, and to get a diatonic scale, we'd put in Fo. Now, a tritonic scale would be a triangle, right? So we would have to add a whole new tone, which we're not familiar with, or we are now familiar with. That's Sa. We still have some unnamed positions. If we were to create a pentatonic scale, we'd have to add another note called Lo. It's only when we get to the hexatonic scale, 6 notes, that we add a Do and a Ra, completing all the sounds of the chromatic scale that we're using for this series. Do, Do, Re, Ra, Mi, Fa, Fo, So, Sa, La, Lo, Ti. Now, let's get a sense of the geometries here again. Do to Fo creates our diatonic scale. If we want to go to a quadratonic scale, we connect up La and Ra. So we have Do, Fo, Ra, La. Do, Ra, Fo, La. If we want to create a tritonic scale that's symmetric, we connect Do up with Mi, and Mi to Sa, and Sa back to Do. We now have a triangle. In terms of a pentatonic scale that's symmetric, we would connect up Do to Re, and to keep it symmetric on this side, Lo to Do. We could then drop down to a Fa and a So. Once again, symmetric, more or less. If I had a perfect circle, connect those up. So we would have Do, Re, Fa, So, Lo, back to Do. A hexatonic scale? Well, in that case, we'd probably keep these, the Do, the Re, and the Lo, and we'd add the Mi, the Fo, the Sa, back to the Lo. 6 notes. Do, Re, Fa, Do, Re, Mi, Fo, Sa, Lo, and Do. 6 symmetric around the middle axis of the chromatic scale. 7, as we know, is the Do, the Re, the Mi, the Fa, the So, the La, and the Ti. Not symmetric. To go to an octatonic scale, the last one that we have studied, we would simply group the Do, the Ti, and the Do, the Fa, the Fo, and the So, and then take the Ra and La, which face each other across the clock. You could continue this operation. See if you can find 9 positions, 10, and 11. 11 would be easy enough. Simply drop out the Fo, so you'd have a symmetry with every other note. So you have Do, Do, Re, Ra, Mi, Fa, So, Sa, La, Lo, Ti. You play with it for 10. What's the value of this? We're learning how to sing. Singing requires that you move between different tones. Those tones have a step interval of at least a half a tone. Some step intervals are more commonplace than others. Ultimately, you want to be able to move smoothly between any steps, between possibly a number of octaves as well. The more practice you get with it, the more you'll be able to control your voice tonality when moving across an interval. That's not singing. It's an element of singing. Singing involves far more. It involves the ability to make the interval, to leave space, to sustain or to truncate tones. This is what gives lyricism. It gives phrasing. It gives a sense of movement, but a movement with purpose. A purpose which is intended in some way across an entire song to give a sense that every one of those notes has played a role in the expression of that tune, from past through present to future. But it all begins by mastering the elements of tonality.
When I first saw you,
I'd like to think my singing has improved since beginning this project. Certainly I pay more attention to my voice now.
a change of tone.
Here I'm singing in Who's to Blame, an octave lower than
Who
usual.
was your color?
The plan is to sing in both low and high voice, spanning some 2.5 octaves. You'll probably notice I'm more at ease in the middle of my vocal range.
Out of your head.
This is true of all singers. It's called the vocal wheelhouse. Most singers change the key of a tune to stay in that wheelhouse.
I said how
But I'm a bit of a purist.
you said you were ready.
I'm making singing a lifelong challenge. The goal is to expand my range while improving my intonation. To really get good, I'll also have to begin developing my vocal quality as well.
It's just
Maybe next life I'll have a kind of voice that truly enthralls. But this one is all about exploring the possibilities.
if it's
Possibilities that go well beyond singing.
If it's the air who's to blame.
To the music of life itself.
You said you were happy. I said how few. You said you were ready from one